Okay, Alexander, let's talk about Taiwan. Let's do an update as to what's going on with Taiwan. We got some news coming from the US and Secretary of State Blinken, and it looks like we are inching a little bit closer to some sort of conflict, whatever that may entail. I'm not saying that that means something military. I don't know. It just seems that the tensions are being raised just a little bit more with each passing day, each passing week, and so it's leading somewhere, and that somewhere may not be good. Once again, I don't know where this could go, and we're not sounding the alarms to any type of all out war or anything, but um, Blinken is pressing things forward in a bad way. So what's going on with Taiwan?
Yeah, I mean, this seems to be an actual drive to escalate tensions between the United States and China over the Taiwan issue. And I think it's important to stress that all the moves at the moment are coming from the United States. And I'm something of a loss, if I have to be straightforward about it, to understand why. I don't fully understand why the United States seems to be edging continuously towards provoking China over the Taiwan issue, which, as everybody who follows Chinese foreign policy and Chinese domestic policy knows, is for the Chinese an extremely sensitive issue indeed. Anyway, what has happened is that just a few days after the President of the United States, Joe Biden, said at a town hall meeting that the United States has a commitment to defending Taiwan, we've now had a statement. This is a formal statement, a press statement, published on the State Department website by the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. And in it, he says that Taiwan, though not a member of the United Nations, cannot be a member of the United Nations because, for the moment, and in accordance with the one China policy that everybody up to now has adhered to, it is a part of China, a component part of China, and China, as a member state of the United Nations, is represented at the United Nations by the government of Beijing. What Blinken is saying is that Taiwan should have separate representation in some form at the United Nations and should be represented at every level of the UN system. Now, he doesn't seem to be, he's not saying that Taiwan should be recognized by the United Nations as a member state, but he's saying that it should be recognized as something just below the level of a member state, that it should participate actively in all UN institutions, in all UN bodies, including, for example, the World Health Organization, the International Civil Aviation Organization, all those sort of bodies, but not yet as a member state. But of course, as he knows, if Taiwan is participating in all UN bodies, then sooner or later, when it does eventually declare independence, which it would then almost certainly at some point choose to do, then it would apply for full UN membership as a member state. So this is clearly signalling that Taiwan is edging towards declaring itself independent from China, and it is also clearly signalling that the United States supports Taiwan's independence drive. This despite the fact that the Chinese have repeatedly said that for them, independence by Taiwan, a declaration of independence by Taiwan, is a red line, and they will take military action or are prepared to take military action to prevent it. So what we are seeing is that the United States is not so much testing China's red line, it's actually going out of its way to make it clear to China that it doesn't recognize that red line. Now, I think this is an incredibly dangerous game. I don't quite know what exactly it is that Blinken and the administration think they're doing by all of this, but they are going out of their way, as it seems to me, to provoke China on the one issue where China simply cannot back down. And the Chinese have made that point repeatedly because the entire legitimacy of the government in Beijing depends upon it establishing itself as the one single government of the whole of China. And they won't retreat from that. So I too don't think there's going to be a war anytime soon. But we've taken another step towards the point where such a war starts to become possible. And as I said, the logic and the thinking behind all of this is completely mysterious to me. I can't understand whether this is intentional, or whether Blinken and other people in the administration really do want to set up a situation where there is an outright confrontation with China in the Pacific, which could easily escalate out of control, or whether they think that the Chinese are bluffing, which, to be straightforward about it, I don't think they are. But that may be the calculation also. But either way, this seems to me an extraordinarily risky game, and I don't fully understand why the US insists on playing it.
Well, who's coming up with this policy? Because obviously Joe Biden is not coming up with this policy because Joe Biden can barely function on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So that's for sure. Kamala probably couldn't find China on a map. And we look at Blinken then. Blinken is a lightweight. I mean, he's not the most intelligent of people, and I doubt that he could formulate any type of coherent or incoherent China policy, to be quite honest. So the question becomes, who is pushing this agenda? Who is it?
That's a very good point. By the way, it's interesting that you brought up the word incoherent, because Patrick Buchanan has recently published an article about Taiwan in which he said that the United States has gone from a position of strategic ambiguity on the Taiwan question to a position of strategic incoherence about the Taiwan question, because it appears to be encouraging Taiwan to declare independence from China, despite the fact that the United States is not able to defend Taiwan from China. Apparently, that is now the military consensus. And despite recent reports which have appeared in places like the Wall Street Journal, that Taiwan is not able to defend itself either. Apparently, its military is not in good shape, which isn't something I knew, by the way, but it turns out that that is the case. So who is behind this? Well, I think that Blinken, who I agree is not perhaps the brightest person around, but who clearly thinks he is. I mean, he clearly thinks that he is, the Talleyrand of American foreign policy. He clearly is somebody who is very invested in this policy and believes it. He's coming up all the time with comments about Taiwan, the US having a rock solid support for democratic Taiwan. He's made all these statements, which, as I said, the Chinese must see as exceptionally provocative. So at some level, he is driving this policy. But I can't help but think that he's able to do it basically for two reasons. Firstly, because there isn't a strong president able to rein him in. But secondly, because he's got the support of the neocons in the State Department and in the US foreign policy think tank community, who are always pressing for further confrontation, who always overestimate the power of the United States. That's been the consistent story in all the awful wars that have gone hideously wrong, and who always look for confrontation instead of compromise. And they've decided, a consensus has developed amongst them, that China is the biggest long-term challenge to the United States. That, by the way, is true. And because they think in those terms, they think that that means that they must challenge China on every possible issue, including on Taiwan, where, to be straightforward about it, the Chinese are in a strong position because they can conquer Taiwan, and the United States is in a weak position because it cannot defend it. But nonetheless, that kind of pragmatic understanding is one that the neocons don't seem to be able ever to accept.
Yeah, but maybe China conquering Taiwan would come at a very high price. I mean, it would damage China, perhaps in a
It
way
would
that the
damage
neocons
China.
or the
Yeah, but it
neoliberals
would. But
have game planned.
yeah,
On
I
the
know.
flip
I'm
side,
sure.
maybe this is a distraction for the U.S. as well and for the Biden
Well.
administration in general.
Let's come to the second point in a moment, because I think you may have a clue. You may be onto an important clue there. But yes, I think for China, an invasion of Taiwan, which is not what the Chinese are seeking, would undoubtedly be very damaging. I mean, in multiple ways, China would pay a very high price for it. There would be all kinds of economic sanctions around the world. There would be a massive reaction around the world against the use of Chinese military force and all those things. Having said that, and this is a point about the neocons that they never seem to understand, the United States would pay a price too. Firstly, if it could not defend Taiwan, it would be humiliated. But secondly, China today is such a very important part of the world economy that if there were across-the-board sanctions against China, let's assume an economic blockade on China of some kind, the effect on supply chains across the industrialized world would be simply catastrophic. I mean, how does Apple continue to make its mobile phones if it can't, ship in the goods from China? I mean, it's something that just doesn't bear thinking about. How do you replace all those special materials, the rare earths that China produces, for example, and which is such an important part of electronic subcomponents? How, in fact, do you deal with all the vast problems of world trade that would follow if you simply tried to cut off China in that way? There would be an economic crisis in China, but there would also, it seems to me, be an economic crisis in the West as well. Now, the Chinese have said that they're prepared to pay that price because, as I said, for them, Taiwan is an existential issue. Is the United States? Would we be prepared to pay that kind of price? I think we need to take a step back and think about this. But of course, the neocons never think about anything. They just go charging forward. But all right, let's put that aside. Maybe there's some kind of idea that, you can put enormous pressure on China if it invades and occupies Taiwan, and the United States will come out of it all right. Maybe that's what they also think. They may be wrong about that, but I do think that there is the other calculation, which is that the political situation in the United States is turning very bad. I mean, poll ratings of the administration are falling and continuing to fall, and are continuing to fall fast. We are seeing a deepening economic crisis in the United States. So what is the best way out of these kind of problems? You manufacture an international crisis on some issue. And Taiwan might be what you create that crisis around. But all I would say is this: creating a crisis around Iraq when Saddam Hussein was in charge, or Libya when Muammar Gaddafi was in charge, well, that's one thing. These are weak countries with weak militaries. They're not able to defend themselves. They're not central players in the international system. Their economies play an almost trivial role in the world economy. China is different at so many levels that creating a crisis around China seems to be reckless beyond anything I can conceive of or imagine. And I get to say, make this very last final comment. I think if the United States, if people like Blinken think that by bringing up this issue of values, which is what they're always doing, I mean, his statement is all about values, that they're creating dividing lines between the United States and China, and that countries that share democratic values with the United States will, as a result, align themselves with the United States, then they are misjudging sentiment I think a lot of countries, including countries which are democracies, far from feeling that they want to align with the United States, will say to themselves, well, the United States is being reckless and irresponsible because under the slogan of defending values, it's creating a crisis where there isn't a need for one. And I think that is, a calculation that Blinken obviously hasn't made and needs to understand. Once again, it seems to me we are being pulled along by a situation, into a situation, a bad situation, by people who think they are very clever, but who in fact are not, and who have not thought this thing through.
Yeah, values and democracies. I struggle to figure out where the democracies in the West anymore. They're not
Well,
in Europe
indeed.
and they're not in the United States,
Well, indeed.
at
Well,
least on
indeed.
a federal level. But
well, I mean,
or the values. Yeah,
well,
but
indeed, in declarations and
yeah, in declaration, I understand.
that's all. Yeah.
Yeah, EU values and
Yeah.
values coming out from the Biden White House is okay, or for Blinken from that matter. I don't think he's capable to speak about values, but maybe the plan is to destroy everything. Once again, I go back to how these guys think, and I don't mean Blinken. I think the people above Blinken. I think this is once again this is well above Blinken's pay grade. all of this type of thinking. So maybe the plan is to wreak havoc and chaos. Maybe the plan is to build back better, and they just want as many different variations to execute that plan as possible. One of those variations may be pandemic. Another variation may be going at it with China. Maybe another variation is going at it with Russia and NATO and Russia. So maybe they're just trying to create different scenarios where if one fails, they can fall back on the other. And to the people above Blinken, the globalists and the elites, maybe for them, the best way to tear down the system and to eventually even tear down the United States, to build it back better, one of the plans could be, let's just destroy all the supply chain. Let's destroy trade with China. Let's create this conflict. Let's wreak havoc all over Europe. What do we care? That's their thinking. What do we care? They're thinking it's chaos,
Yeah.
for what they believe is the master plan that they have in their heads.
The empire of chaos. Look, I don't exclude that at all. All I will say about it, if that is what they think, if that is indeed the idea that they have, then I come back to what I've said. That can only work if they can control the chaos. If they can't control the chaos, then it can't work. And they cannot control chaos because no one can. It is not clever. It is stupid. It is even more, there being in that case, even more stupid and even more reckless than I was saying before, because they are creating a crisis deliberately, not just a crisis that they can't prevail in, but a crisis which is intended to disrupt and destabilize their own societies, when it is those societies that give them the wealth and the power that they actually have. So it's foolish at multiple levels.
But maybe they've moved past their society in their minds. I'm trying to put myself in their minds. Maybe they've moved past the belief that they have a society. To them, they control the planet, or they want to control the planet, and there is no country or society. And so it's interchangeable. China, US, Europe, it doesn't matter where the chaos is or which countries we destroy, because for them, they're like a level above. They're above the clouds in their mind, looking down on everything.
In their mind, but this is my point. It is in their mind. If that is what they think, then first of all, in that case, we really are looking for it. We really are heading towards catastrophe in the Straits of Taiwan. I mean, because in that case, that's clear. That would then be the plan. But all I am saying is, if that is the plan, and I'm not saying that it might not be. I mean, quite possibly it is. That's quite possibly what they do think. Then all I am saying again is they're not being clever. They are being extremely stupid, because they are destroying the very social, economic, political system that makes them the powerful figures that they are. They may think that they walk on the clouds as gods, but the reality is that they don't. And, it'll all pull them down to earth, and they'll come crashing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's just that they've stated that that's their goal. They want to destroy the economic
Oh,
and
yeah.
political system that exists. I mean, they've declared it. They've
Oh,
declared
I'm
it
not
on
saying.
multiple
I'm,
occasions.
I'm not. I'm not saying. I'm just making the observation,
Yeah,
as I
and,
said,
and, and
that's
Blinken
not
is a
that's
neoliberal,
yeah,
and neoliberals and neocons now, there's pretty much no difference. And so,
yeah, yeah,
for him to goad China in this way, which is what it is, he's goading them.
yeah.
It kind of makes sense in a way that they're the
Oh,
people that are telling Blinken to goad China they just don't seem to care anymore.
well,
They
yeah,
don't care about
yeah.
where this leads the masses, to what point
No,
it leads the masses. For them, it's
again,
irrelevant.
Alex, I repeat what I said. I'm not disputing or denying it. All I am saying is, in that case, they are even more reckless and even more stupid than they would be if they're just making a big miscalculation. I mean, the world is littered. World history is littered with examples of people who think they're clever and who come with overcomplicated things, but which in the end bring about disaster, in fact, catastrophe for everyone, including themselves. And it's quite possible that that's what we're seeing now. I said at the start of this program that I don't understand this strategy because to me it looks stupid to the point of being irrational. But if that is what they are, if they are themselves stupid to the point of being irrational, then that would explain it. But it also means, I'm afraid, that we are seeing the scene is being set for a catastrophe. By the way, and for what it is worth, I don't think it would result in the total catastrophe that we're seeing. I think that what would actually happen in the event that there was a conflict over Taiwan is there would be a massive humiliation for either the United States or China, more probably for the United States. There would be massive disruptions in the world economy, but I certainly don't think that they would achieve anything like the kind of utopian project that they imagine. And I think things would survive. And I think that the people who authored this catastrophe would find themselves in very serious trouble indeed. So I have a somewhat optimistic take on this. But having said that, it's still very alarming and very difficult to understand rationally why they are doing it. But of course, as I said, if they're not being rational, then you can't explain it in rational terms, and you shouldn't even try.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't try to explain it. Maybe it just is stupidity. I mean, these are dumb people, and maybe
Yeah.
they actually think that they're coming up with very smart policies. But maybe it is just pure stupidity. I mean, I would
Yes.
say that that's quite possible given the White House that we're dealing with. At the end of the day, the question is, what does China do, and does it? China's getting goaded into perhaps acting against Taiwan. Does it take the bait? And if it does act against Taiwan, how does it do it? You can go back to how Putin dealt with the coup in Ukraine and his move with Crimea, and I think it was
Yes.
unexpected. But obviously, Russia was being goaded into some sort of wider conflict, and no one expected the move that they made, and they made it, and they did it within the span of a day, literally within 24 hours, and it was just lightning fast, and it took everyone off guard. So, maybe China reacts in a way that no one expects it to react, and in a way that completely just throws throws the entire plan off kilter for these guys.
Yeah. Well, perhaps. I mean, I'm not obviously privy to Chinese political discussions. I mean, I am sure that the Chinese have game planned this. Actually, it is inconceivable to me that a government as structured as the Chinese government hasn't actually sat down and actually game planned this and hasn't worked out what it would do in any particular set of responses. So, I mean, I don't know what they would do. Putin, by the way, said that he does not expect China to take military action over Taiwan, because, eventually the long-term plan is that they will be able to absorb it peacefully. And maybe he knows more. In fact, I'm sure he knows a lot more than we do. So it's possible that they have a plan to deal with this. And we shouldn't try to guess too far what that plan is. And, maybe they're thinking further ahead. But I'm quite sure that they are thinking further ahead than the Americans are. But what I'm saying is, it's the Americans at the moment who are making the running, goading and provoking the Chinese. And it's illogical to me that they would want to do that in that kind of way. The wise thing at the moment, given that the United States does not have a strong hand over Taiwan, is for the United States to try to diffuse the tensions. What it's doing instead is increasing them. And that does seem a very weird thing to be doing at this time. And I have to say, looking at Blinken, who does come across to me as one of these people who believes himself to be very clever and who really isn't, that doesn't inspire any kind of confidence at all.
No, and on one final note is I'm sure that China is looking at all of these statements from Blinken and they're saying, look, this is coming from Blinken. We gave him a spanking in Alaska, and he's an idiot. He's a clown. So you also got to wonder. I'm sure they're taking this seriously, but I'm kind of questioning how seriously are they taking it, given the fact that it's coming from a clown like Blinken, who they've already dealt with pretty easily in Alaska. I mean,
absolutely,
they gave him a real spanking in Alaska.
Absolutely, so. And as they pointed out, there is no real prospect. There's no possibility that what Blinken is demanding, that Taiwan be given some kind of presence in the UN, is going to happen. I mean, there's no support for that, apart from within the United States and a few countries. I mean, Lithuania might be on board, but Germany certainly would not be. So that's just not going to happen. So they can afford to shrug their shoulders and say it's just Blinken talking nonsense as he usually does. But at the same time, I think it's important always to remember that the Chinese do have red lines on Taiwan. I mean, they've actually said that. They said straightforwardly that as far as they're concerned, independence for Taiwan is a red line. And they've been very ambiguous about what they would do if Taiwan did declare itself independent, but they made it absolutely clear that that is unacceptable and they would act in the event that happened.
Yeah. All right. It's,
No.
Blinken and a Biden White House. I'm sure the Chinese are just looking at this and they're saying, the whole world is looking at this and just saying.
Well, the whole world is indeed looking at this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Jokers. Yeah. Anyway. All right. We'll continue to follow this.
Absolutely.
Topic. Guys, go to the Duran.locals.com. You'll find us there, and go to the Duran shop, 10% off when you use the code REALNEWS. Take care.